Captain Lisa Monroe stood on the bridge of the carrier Endurance and read the recall orders for the third time. The words did not change. They were clear and simple and terrible. All ships return to Earth space. No exceptions. No delays. Through the forward windows, she could see the planet below. Tazari Colony Theta 7 was a small world, green and blue, home to about 200,000 people. Peaceful people who grew food and raised children and had never harmed anyone. Behind the Endurance, still 3 days away, but coming fast, was a syndicate raiding fleet. 12 ships full of pirates who would take everything the colony had and kill anyone who resisted. Commander Kevin Park stood beside her. He was young for his rank, with black hair and worried eyes. "Captain, we could stay. Just until the colony evacuates." Lisa shook her head slowly. "Our orders are clear. Withdraw immediately, but they'll be slaughtered." Lisa turned to look at him. Her face was calm, but her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. I know exactly what will happen. And there is nothing I can do about it." She opened the channel to the colony below. "Tazari Colony Theta 7, this is Captain Monroe of the Endurance. We have received orders to withdraw from this sector. You have 6 hours to evacuate your civilians to our ship. After that, we are leaving." The colony administrator's voice crackled with panic. He was an older Tasari male with pale green skin and large, frightened eyes. "Captain, please. The council promised protection. We paid our taxes. We followed every rule." "The council is not here," Lisa said quietly. "We were here. Remember that when you tell your children what happened today." 6 hours later, the Endurance left orbit with 8,000 Tasari refugees packed into every available space. Behind them, they left a colony that would be destroyed within a week. Lisa did not look back. She could not afford to. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on 100 worlds. Human ships withdrew. Human doctors packed their equipment. Human soldiers said goodbye to the alien families they had protected. Dr. Nathan Cole was the last human to leave Viridian Medical Station. He had spent 15 years running this place, treating any species that needed help, never asking for payment. The station was funded entirely by Earth, a gift to the galaxy that had cost billions. He walked through the empty halls one final time. Every room held memories. In this room, he had delivered a Corvani baby when complications made a normal birth impossible. The mother had named the child after him, a great honor in Corvani culture. In that room, an elderly Deshan had died peacefully, holding Nathan's hand because there was no family to be with her. He had sat with her for 3 days, talking and reading and simply being present. In the main treatment area, he had saved a young human soldier who had been shot protecting a Velthari village. The soldier had lost an arm, but kept his life. He was back on Earth now, married with 2 children. Nathan left a small metal plaque by the entrance. The words were simple. "Here, humanity served. Here, we were told we were not needed." He boarded the last transport and did not look back. 3 months after the withdrawal began, the galaxy started to notice the silence. The first major crisis came in the Corvani trade lanes. Without human patrol ships, the syndicate grew bold. 3 cargo convoys were destroyed in a single week. Thousands of tons of food and medicine never reached their destinations. The Corvani Trade Guild demanded action from the Council. High Arbiter Vox responded with confidence. "We will assign other species to patrol the routes." The humans were never as important as they believed themselves to be. But when the Council tried to organize replacement patrols, problems appeared immediately. The Deshans refused to send their ships so far from home. The Solvans did not have enough vessels. The Velthari argued about cost-sharing for 6 weeks without reaching a decision. Meanwhile, the Syndicate took more convoys. The price of basic goods began to rise. Colonies that depended on trade started to go hungry. Ambassador Krell spoke before the council with growing frustration. The humans patrolled 40% of council space. They did it efficiently, and they did it without asking for anything in return. Now they are gone, and we cannot cover even half of what they protected. Vox waved a tentacle dismissively. The Solvan exaggerates. We will adapt. We always do. We always had humans to catch us when we stumbled, Krell replied. Who will catch us now? On Earth, the changes were quieter, but no less significant. President Margaret Lane addressed the people in a rare public speech. She was a small woman with white hair and sharp eyes. She had served in the military for 30 years before entering politics. She understood sacrifice better than most. For 300 years, we gave everything we had to the Galactic Council. Our money, our technology, our children's lives. And what did we receive in return? Contempt, dismissal, abandonment in our hour of need. She paused and looked directly into the cameras. That era is over. From this day forward, Earth's resources will serve Earth's people. Our ships will protect our borders. Our doctors will heal our sick. Our soldiers will die only for those who would do the same for us. The economy, freed from the burden of galactic peacekeeping, began to grow. New colonies were established in systems humanity had previously ignored because they were too busy defending others. Research programs flourished. Unemployment dropped. People began to hope again, and the military, which had been spread across 1,000 light years, now concentrated in human space. Ships that had been maintained just well enough to function were repaired and upgraded. Soldiers who had been exhausted from constant deployment were given time to rest and train. Earth was not hiding. Earth was preparing. 6 months after the withdrawal, the Velthari sent a desperate message. The plague had returned. Their medical system, never strong to begin with, was collapsing. Millions were sick. Thousands were dying every day. They begged for help. They promised anything. They were terrified. President Lane read their message and thought for a long time. Then she gave her orders. Medical ships loaded with supplies left for Velthari space within a week. Doctors volunteered by the thousands. Earth would help, because that was who humans were. But there would be no treaty, no alliance, no return to the Council. This was charity, freely given, and it could be taken away just as freely. The Velthari received their medicine and their doctors. They also received a lesson they would never forget. Mercy, once taken for granted, becomes precious when it is almost lost. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Syndicate watched and waited. The humans were gone. The Council was weak and divided. The time for waiting was almost over. The time for hunting was about to begin. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species. Its walls stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the ceiling. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in floating chairs, arranged in circles that went up and up like a giant bowl made of light and metal. Ambassador Daniel Price stood at the center of this enormous space. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. His suit was simple and dark. He held no weapons. He carried no threats. He had only words, and he knew that words had failed humanity for 300 years. Behind him, through the massive windows, he could see the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there were the graves of millions of humans who had died protecting species that now looked at him with boredom and irritation. The Leshan High Arbiter, a creature named Vox, who resembled a purple octopus standing upright, waved several tentacles in a gesture of dismissal. The human ambassador wishes to speak again. How many times must we hear the same complaints? Soft laughter rippled through parts of the chamber. Daniel waited for it to fade. 312 years ago, Daniel began, the first human ship made contact with the Galactic Council. We were young. We were eager. We wanted to help. We wanted to belong. He paused and looked around the room. Thousands of alien eyes stared back at him. Some were curious. Most were indifferent. In those 300 years, human soldiers have died on 47 worlds that were not our own. Human doctors have treated plagues on 200 planets. Human engineers have built hospitals, schools, and power plants across this galaxy. We have given and given and given. Vox made a sound like bubbles popping. Yes, the humans remind us constantly of their sacrifices. It becomes tiresome. What did we ask in return? Daniel continued as if Vox had not spoken. Only one thing. The same protection that every council member promises to every other. If one of us is attacked, all of us respond. That was the agreement. That was the promise. His voice grew harder now. The tiredness in his eyes was becoming something else. Something colder. 6 months ago, the Syndicate attacked our colony on Harvest 3. 15,000 humans lived there. Families, children. They called for help. They waited for the council fleet that never came. The chamber was quieter now. A few representatives shifted uncomfortably in their floating chairs. We submitted an emergency request for mutual defense. The council voted to study the matter. While you studied, the Syndicate burned our cities. While you debated, our people died. While you discussed procedures and protocols, we buried our dead in mass graves because there was no one left to dig individual ones. Daniel pulled a small device from his pocket. A hologram appeared above his hand, showing a planet from orbit. Half of its surface was blackened and scarred. This is what remains of Harvest 3. 11,000 dead. 4,000 survivors, most of them injured. And the council's response was to form a committee. Vox's tentacles curled with annoyance. The situation was complicated. The Syndicate has powerful allies. We could not simply, when the Corvani raiders threatened your trade lanes, Daniel interrupted. Human ships held the line for 18 months. We did not form a committee. We acted. 1,200 human sailors died protecting Theshan cargo. Vox fell silent. When the Drexar awakened and threatened to destroy the Solvan homeworld, it was a human diplomat who walked into their chamber alone and negotiated peace. She spent 9 months in their prison before they agreed to talk. 9 months of torture and darkness, and she never broke. She saved billions of Solvan lives. Ambassador Krell of the Solvan Union lowered her head. Her species looked somewhat like tall, thin deer with silver fur. Her large, dark eyes were wet with what might have been shame. When the Velthari plague spread through the outer colonies, human medical ships arrived first. Our doctors worked without rest. Many of them caught the plague themselves. They kept working anyway. 63 human doctors died saving Velthari lives. The Velthari representative, a being that resembled a humanoid made of crystalline blue stone, said nothing. It did not need to. The silence spoke clearly enough. We have done all of this, Daniel said, and we have asked for only one thing. Stand with us when we need you. That was the agreement. That was the promise. He turned slowly, looking at each section of the chamber in turn. 147 times we have requested help. 147 times the council has found reasons to refuse. Too complicated. Too expensive. Too risky. Too inconvenient. Daniel put the hologram device away. When he spoke again, his voice was calm and steady, like a doctor delivering news of a death. The United Earth government has made a decision. Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council. All treaties are dissolved. All military agreements are ended. All humanitarian missions will cease. All technology sharing is terminated. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ever-moving tentacles of High Arbiter Vox went still. Our ships will return to Earth space within 60 days. Our doctors will pack up their equipment and come home. Our soldiers will stop dying for people who do not care if they live or die. A Corvani representative, a reptilian being with bright red scales, stood up. You cannot simply leave. The trade lanes are no longer our concern, Daniel said. But the syndicate is no longer our problem. Vox recovered his voice. This is emotional nonsense. The humans will return in a month when they realize they need us. Daniel looked at Vox for a long moment. When he spoke, there was no anger in his voice. There was something worse. There was nothing at all. We needed you 6 months ago. You chose not to come. Now we choose to leave. He walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. Wait, Ambassador Krell called out. Ambassador Price, please. Surely we can discuss. Daniel stopped at the door. He did not turn around. For 300 years, we discussed. We negotiated. We compromised. We begged. We did everything except the one thing we should have done long ago. He stepped through the door. We should have respected ourselves enough to leave. The door closed behind him with a soft sound. It was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was just the door closing. But in that moment, the galaxy changed forever. High Arbiter Vox was the first to speak. Good riddance. The humans were always too emotional, too soft. We will manage perfectly well without them. Ambassador Krell stared at the closed door. She had lived long enough to know the difference between confidence and foolishness. She said nothing, but in her heart, she was afraid. 1 year after the human withdrawal, the galaxy was breaking apart. The syndicate had grown from a nuisance into a terror. What had once been small raids on isolated convoys had become organized attacks on entire systems. They no longer feared the Council because the Council had proven itself unable to respond. Ambassador Yeltos of the Velthari stood before the human Farin, minister in the Great Hall of Earth's capital. His crystalline body, once bright blue, had faded to a dull gray. He looked sick and old and afraid. Claire Bennett watched him with careful eyes. She was a tall woman with brown skin and silver hair, known for her sharp mind and sharper tongue. She had spent 20 years as a diplomat before taking this position, and she had learned to read aliens as easily as humans. Yeltos lowered himself to the ground in a gesture of complete submission. No Velthari had done this in front of another species in recorded history. Their pride was legendary. Please, Yeltos whispered. The plague grows worse. The medicine you sent has helped, but it is not enough. We need human doctors, human researchers, human compassion. Without your help, my species will not survive another year. Claire let the silence stretch for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was calm and measured. I remember Harvest 3, Ambassador. I remember watching the emergency broadcasts while your council debated procedures. I remember the faces of 15,000 people who trusted the galaxy to help them. Yeltos lowered his head further. I know what we did, what we failed to do. Do you remember what you said when we asked for your vote? When we begged for the mutual defense that your people had promised? The Velthari's voice was barely audible. I said that human problems were human problems. I said that we should not waste resources on a species that could not protect itself. Claire nodded slowly. And now here you are, asking us to save you from your own problem. Yes. Yeltos looked up at her with eyes that held no pride left. I was wrong. We were all wrong. We took your kindness and threw it back in your faces. We deserve whatever happens to us. Claire studied him for a long time. Then she sighed, and some of the hardness left her expression. We will send more doctors, more medicine, more researchers. We will do this because that is who we are. We cannot watch a species die and do nothing, even a species that abandoned us. Yeltos trembled with relief. Thank you. Thank you. But understand this clearly. Claire's voice hardened again. There will be no treaty. No alliance. No return to the council. You will receive our help because we choose to give it, not because you deserve it. And if you ever take our kindness for granted again, it will end. Forever. The Valkyrie left Earth with shiploads of supplies and a wound in his heart that would never fully heal. He had learned what it meant to need mercy from those you had wronged, but not all species came to Earth seeking forgiveness in the secret chambers of the Deshan hegemony. High Arbiter Vox gathered his most loyal advisors. The situation was becoming critical. Trade was disrupted. Food was growing scarce. Several outer colonies had begun to question Deshan leadership. Vox needed a victory. He needed someone to blame. And he had found the perfect target. The humans are the source of all our problems, Vox declared. Before they left, everything worked. Now everything fails. The solution is obvious. His chief military advisor, Admiral Reth, shifted uncomfortably. High Arbiter, the humans have done nothing aggressive. They simply withdrew their support. Exactly. They abandoned their responsibilities. They broke their agreements. They must be punished and forced to return to their proper place. Reth's many eyes blinked in confusion. Their proper place? Serving the Council. Serving us. They are a useful species when properly controlled. We simply need to remind them of their role. You are suggesting military action against Earth? Vox's tentacles curled with satisfaction. I am suggesting a lesson. A small demonstration of force. Once the humans understand that they cannot simply walk away from their obligations, they will return. They will beg to return. Reth was silent for a long moment. He had fought alongside humans during the Corvani crisis. He had seen their courage and their skill. He had also seen what happened to enemies who underestimated them. High Arbiter, I must advise caution. The humans are not weak. Their withdrawal was not a sign of cowardice. They are soft, Vox interrupted. They are emotional. They care too much about lives and feelings. That makes them predictable and easy to manipulate. A show of force will bring them to their knees. Reth wanted to argue further, but he saw the look in Vox's eyes. The High Arbiter had made his decision. Anyone who disagreed would be removed from power and replaced with someone more agreeable. As you command, High Arbiter. The motion was brought before the Council in a closed session. Vox presented his plan with absolute confidence. A fleet of 300 ships would travel to the border of human space. They would demand the immediate return of all human assets and personnel to Council service. If the humans refused, the fleet would proceed to Earth and enforce compliance. Ambassador Krell listened with growing horror. This is insanity. You are proposing an invasion of human space based on nothing but wounded pride. I am proposing a restoration of order, Vox replied smoothly. The humans have been allowed to believe they are independent. They are not. They are members of this council, and they will fulfill their obligations. They withdrew from the council, legally and properly. They owe us nothing. They owe us everything. Who lifted them from their primitive planet? Who gave them access to galactic technology? Who allowed them to believe they were our equals? Krell stared at Vox with disgust. You still do not understand, do you? They were never our servants. They were our partners. And we drove them away with our arrogance. The Solvan representative is noted for her sympathy toward humans, Vox said with a sneer. Perhaps she should recuse herself from this vote. The vote was close, but it passed. Fear of the Syndicate, frustration with economic collapse, and centuries of believing in Deshan. Superiority combined to create a majority. 300 warships began to gather at the edge of Deshan space. Their crews were confident. Their commanders were eager. Their High Arbiter had promised them an easy victory. None of them understood what they were about to face. On Earth, intelligence services tracked the Theshan fleet's movements with quiet efficiency. Reports were sent up the chain of command. Plans were reviewed and updated. Ships were positioned. President Lane read the latest report and set it down with a sigh. They really are going to attack us. Admiral Samuel Grant stood before her desk. He was a large man with a shaved head and calm gray eyes. He had commanded ships in a dozen conflicts and had never lost a battle. It appears so, Madam President. How many ships can we put in their path? 47 in the home system. Another 200 within 3 days' travel. We also have assets they do not know about. The defensive platforms and other things. The Council never saw everything we could do. We kept our best weapons hidden, just in case. Lane nodded slowly. I hoped it would never come to this. I hoped they would learn. Some lessons must be taught the hard way. Prepare our defenses. Give them every chance to turn back. But if they come for us, she looked at Grant with eyes that held no mercy left. End them. Grant saluted. Yes, Madam President. The trap was set. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and the galaxy would finally learn what happened when humanity stopped being kind. The Theshan fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 300 warships spread across the darkness like a wall of metal and fire. Their weapons were charged. Their shields were raised. Their crews were ready for victory. Admiral Reth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and studied the human system before him. Earth was still distant, a blue dot among the stars. But it was there, waiting. Admiral, sensors detect 47 human vessels in defensive positions near the 4th planet. Reth calculated the odds. 6-1 in his favor. By any reasonable measure, this should be a simple victory. But something felt wrong. The humans were not running. They were not calling for negotiations. They were simply sitting there, waiting, as if 300 warships meant nothing to them. Open a channel to the human fleet. The face that appeared on his screen belonged to Admiral Samuel Grant. The human looked calm, almost bored. This bothered Reth more than any show of fear would have. Theshan fleet. This is Admiral Grant of the United Earth Navy. You have entered human space without permission. You will turn around immediately and return to Council territory. Reth had been given specific orders about what to say. He followed them despite his growing unease. Human Commander, you are in violation of your obligations to the Galactic Council. You will surrender your ships and accompany us back to Council space, where you will resume your proper duties. Resistance is futile. You are outnumbered 6-1. Grant's expression did not change. I'm going to give you one chance, Admiral. One chance because I respect the soldiers under your command, even if I cannot respect the leaders who sent them here. You are in no position to make demands. Turn around. Go home. Tell Vox that humanity does not bluff, does not beg, and does not forgive those who come to our home with weapons drawn. Reth hesitated. Something in the human's voice gave him pause. This was not the desperation of a beaten enemy. This was the patience of a predator waiting for its prey to step into the trap. But his orders were clear. Vox expected victory. Anything less would mean the end of Reth's career and possibly his life. Human vessels will surrender or be destroyed. You have 5 minutes to comply. Grant nodded slowly. You had your chance. The channel closed. Reth turned to his tactical officer. Prepare to engage. The first sign that something was wrong came 30 seconds later. Admiral! Multiple contacts appearing on sensors. They weren't there before. They just appeared. Reth looked at the tactical display and felt his heart freeze. From the asteroid belt, ships were emerging. Not just a few ships. Fleets of ships. 7 complete battle groups, each larger than any single Dacian formation. They spread out in a perfect arc, cutting off any retreat. That's impossible. Where did they come from? Unknown, sir. They must have been hiding in the asteroids. Running silent, waiting. The numbers changed on the display. 47 human ships became 350. The Dacians were no longer the hunters. They were surrounded, and then the space around them began to explode. Mines. Thousands of stealth mines that had been invisible until they activated. They detonated in precise sequences, tearing through Dacian formations that had been carefully designed to look impressive, but were never meant to withstand a real attack. Ships died in the first 30 seconds. The endless pride, the conquest of stars, the Vox's glory, names that were supposed to bring fear to human hearts became tombstones floating in the void. Return fire, Reth screamed. Target the nearest human vessels. His ships tried. They truly did. But the humans moved with a coordination the Dacians had never seen. Every shot was dodged or blocked. Every attack was answered with overwhelming force. And then the orbital platforms opened fire. They had been hidden too, disguised as debris and dead satellites. Now they revealed themselves as weapons platforms of incredible power. Beams of energy crossed the darkness and cut through Dacian shields like they were nothing. The Eternal Dominion shook as explosions tore through its lower decks. Alarms screamed. Crew members ran in panic. The smell of burning metal filled the air. Admiral! We've lost 40 ships. 50. 60. Reth watched his fleet die and finally understood the truth. The humans had not been weak. They had not been soft. They had been patient. For 300 years, they had protected the galaxy while hiding their true strength. Now that strength was unleashed. Signal surrender? Reth said quietly. Sir? Signal surrender. Now, before we lose everyone. The white flag went up. The firing slowed, then stopped. The surviving Dacian ships drifted in the wreckage of their formation, waiting to learn their fate. Admiral Grant's face appeared on the screen again. His expression had not changed. Admiral Reth, your fleet has been defeated. 260 of your ships have been destroyed. 38 have surrendered. 2 escaped during the battle. They will carry news of what happened here back to the Council. Reth could not speak. The numbers were impossible. The battle had lasted less than 2 minutes. His entire fleet, the pride of the Dacian hegemony, had been shattered in moments. We will accept your surrender, Grant continued. Your surviving crews will be treated well. They will be fed and given medical care and eventually return to their homes. Because that is who we are. Grant leaned forward slightly. But understand this. We held back. The weapons you saw today are not our strongest. The ships you faced are not our best. We showed you just enough to win. Just enough to teach the lesson. What? What lesson? Tell Vox, tell the Council. Tell everyone who might ever think about attacking Earth. Grant's eyes were cold and hard. We were kind because we chose to be kind. We were patient because we chose to be patient. We protected you because we wanted to, not because we had to. He paused. We stopped choosing to be kind to those who did not deserve it. And if anyone ever threatens our home again, we will not stop at defending ourselves. We will end the threat, permanently. The screen went dark. Reth sat in his command chair, surrounded by the wreckage of his fleet and his pride. He'd have been a soldier his entire life. He had believed in the superiority of his species. He had trusted his leaders. Now he understood that everything he believed was wrong. The humans were not the servants of the galaxy. They were its protectors by choice. And when they stopped protecting, when they stopped being merciful, they became something else entirely. They became terrifying. the two ships that escaped the battle reached Deshan space 3 days later. Their crews told stories that spread across the galaxy like fire. 300 ships destroyed in minutes. Weapons that appeared from nowhere. A human admiral who accepted surrender with the same calm expression he had worn while killing. High Arbiter Vox tried to suppress the news. He tried to spin it as a minor setback, a surprise attack that caught unprepared forces off guard. No one believed him. The Deshan people rose up within a week. Vox was removed from power, arrested, and charged with leading the hegemony into a disastrous war. His trial lasted 3 days. His sentence was exile to a prison moon, where he would spend the rest of his life alone with his failures. The council met in emergency session. For the first time in 3 centuries, representatives were genuinely afraid. They had seen what humanity could do when pushed. They had learned that mercy, once withdrawn, was hard to earn back. Ambassador Krull stood before the assembly. Her voice was heavy with exhaustion and grief. We were warned. We were told exactly what would happen. And we did not listen. Now we must live with the consequences of our arrogance. No one argued. No one blamed the humans. The time for blame was over. The time for consequences had begun. 5 years had passed since the human withdrawal. The galaxy was a different place now, shaped by absence and consequence. The Deshan hegemony no longer existed as a unified power. It had broken into 3 smaller nations, each struggling to survive without the structure that had held them together for millennia. Their proud fleets were gone. Their arrogant leaders were dead or imprisoned. Their people were learning humility the hard way. The Syndicate, which had grown so bold after the human withdrawal, had been systematically destroyed. Not by the Council, which remained too divided to act, but by human hunter-killer groups that no longer needed anyone's permission to operate. Captain Lisa Monroe, now Admiral Monroe, had commanded the final operation. Her ships had appeared above the last Syndicate stronghold without warning. The message she broadcast was simple. You have 1 hour to surrender. Every person, every ship, every weapon. If you refuse, there will be no second chance. The Syndicate warlord laughed at first. Then he saw the weapons powering up. Then he saw the faces of his advisors as they calculated the odds. Then he stopped laughing and started begging. The surrender was accepted. The Syndicate was finished. The trade lanes were safe again, protected not by treaties or agreements, but by the simple knowledge that harming human interests meant human retribution. Ambassador Krull stood before what remained of the Galactic Council. Half the seats were empty now. Species that had once proudly claimed their place among the stars had retreated to their home systems, too broken or too afraid to participate in galactic politics. We gather today to discuss the future, Krull said. Her silver fur had turned white with age, but her eyes were still sharp. But first, we must acknowledge the past. She gestured to the empty seats. For 300 years, we had a partner, an ally, a friend. They asked only to be treated with basic respect. Basic fairness, basic decency, and we could not even give them that. The remaining representatives listened in silence. There were no objections, no excuses. No one left who still believed the old lies. They defended our borders. They healed our sick. They saved us from threats we could not face alone. And when they needed us, we turned our backs. We voted to study the matter while their people burned. Krull's voice grew heavy with emotion she no longer tried to hide. Now they trade with us when it benefits them. They help when they choose to help. They protect those who have earned their protection. And they owe us nothing because we showed them, again and again, that our promises meant nothing. She looked around the chamber one last time. The humans did not destroy us. We destroyed ourselves. The question now is whether we can build something better from the ruins. On Earth, life continued. Children were born who had never known the burden of galactic obligation. They grew up in a world where humans came first, where their needs mattered, where they were not expected to sacrifice everything for strangers who despised them, artists created without war's shadow hanging over them. Scientists explored questions that had nothing to do with defense or survival. Families lived without fear that their loved ones would die protecting people who would not even learn their names. That it was not a perfect world. No world ever is. But it was a human world, built by humans for humans. And that made all the difference. Daniel Price had retired to a small house overlooking the Pacific Ocean. He spent his days reading and gardening and watching the waves crash against the shore. Sometimes visitors came to see him. Diplomats and politicians and historians who wanted to understand what had happened and why. One afternoon, a young Dacian arrived at his door. She was the grandchild of Admiral Reth, the commander who had surrendered at the Battle of Earth. Her grandfather had died 2 years ago, but not before telling her stories about the humans he had fought and the mercy they had shown. "Ambassador Price," she said, using the title even though he no longer held any official position. "May I speak with you?" Daniel invited her inside and made tea, an Earth tradition he had maintained throughout his life. They sat on his small porch and watched the ocean together. "My grandfather spoke of you often," the young Dacian said. "He said you were the one who started everything. The speech that ended human membership in the council. I just said what needed to be said. Others had to make it real. He also said you were the one who argued for accepting the surrender instead of destroying the remaining ships. He said you saved his life." Daniel sipped his tea. "We were angry. We were hurt. But we were not monsters. We never wanted to be monsters." The young Dacian was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question she had traveled across the galaxy to ask. "Do you think humanity will ever return to the Council? Will you ever forgive us?" Daniel watched the waves for a long time before answering. "That is not the right question. What is the right question? The right question is whether the galaxy will ever deserve us again." He set down his cup. "We did not leave because we were weak. We left because we were tired of being strong for people who hated us for it. We did not withdraw because we were selfish. We withdrew because our selflessness was met with contempt." He turned to face her directly. "Kindness freely given is sacred. It is a gift that should be treasured and returned. When it is taken for granted, when it is exploited, when it is thrown back in the giver's face, the wound does not heal quickly. Maybe it never heals at all." The young Dacian sat with this truth for a long time. She thought about her grandfather's stories. She thought about the history she had learned. She thought about the galaxy her people had helped create and then helped destroy. What can we do? She finally asked, "How can we earn a second chance?" Daniel looked at her with eyes that had seen too much but had not yet given up hope entirely. "Be worthy of one. Not for a day or a year or a decade. Be worthy of trust every single moment. Show kindness when it costs you something. Keep your promises even when breaking them would be easier. Treat others the way you want to be treated, especially when they cannot force you to." He smiled slightly. "It is not complicated. It is just hard. The hardest thing in the universe sometimes. But it is the only way." The young Dacian returned home and told others what she had learned. Her message spread slowly at first, then faster as more people listened. A movement began among the younger generation of several species. A movement built on a simple idea that be worthy of the humans, that it was not an apology. Apologies were just words, and words had proven meaningless. It was a commitment to action. A promise demonstrated through behavior, day after day, year after year. Some species embraced this philosophy. Some rejected it. some could not decide. The galaxy remained divided, uncertain, searching for a path forward. But somewhere, in quiet corners of space, far from the old centers of power, new relationships were forming. Small groups of aliens who had proven themselves trustworthy were welcomed into human communities. Trade agreements built on actual fairness were signed and honored. Friendships, real friendships, began to grow. It would take generations. It would require patience and dedication, and the willingness to fail and try again. There were no guarantees, no promises that the future would be better than the past, but there was hope. Small and fragile and precious as a candle flame in a storm, but real. And hope, Daniel Price knew, was where everything good began. He sat on his porch as the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in colors that no other world could match. He thought about the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. The sacrifices, the betrayals, the battles, the silence. He thought about the young Deshan and her question and his answer. Would the galaxy ever deserve humanity again? He did not know. No one could know. The future was unwritten, waiting to be shaped by choices not yet made. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. If that day ever came, if the galaxy finally learned to be worthy of human friendship, it would be because enough people chose to be kind when kindness was hard. Because enough people kept their promises when breaking them was easier. Because enough people treated others the way they wanted to be treated. That was the lesson the humans had tried to teach for 300 years. Maybe. Finally, the galaxy was ready to learn. The sun disappeared below the horizon. The stars came out, thousands of them, millions of them. Each one, a world full of beings who were struggling and hoping and trying to find their way. Daniel Price watched them shine and allowed himself, for just a moment, to believe that things might be okay. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. And someday was worth waiting for.